This morning, our theme is peace. At 1:30 p.m. on October 26, 2018, an ordinary church service, much like today, began in The Hague in the Netherlands. However, that worship service lasted until January 30th, 2019. Now, that's 96 days of continuous worship. Imagine that, 96 days, day and night, of worship. The Dutch law states that no legal action can be interfered with or disrupted in a religious service. Sheltered within the walls of the small Bethel church was an Armenian family. I won't even try to pronounce the name. But they, after living in the Netherlands for 9 years under asylum claims, and after winning multiple court cases which had recently been overturned, were being deported back to their home country, despite credible death threats in their home country. And so the leaders of the church at The Hague did what Christians are uniquely equipped to do. They started worshiping. And they just didn't stop for 96 days. At first, as you can imagine, it was hard to line up speakers and musicians and liturgists, people to read. They struggled as a small congregation to find these people, but as the news spread, you can imagine people from other denominations and other parts of the world began to help out. Pastors and leaders began to participate, and there was sermons in English and French and German. And for 96 days, there was a continuous worship service. The worship service only concluded when the leaders of the church received word that the family's petition was granted and they would be allowed to stay, safely remain in the country. It wasn't because of fearful reaction or some kind of retaliation. That didn't keep the family there. Nor was it because of some escalation of violence. That didn't keep the family safe either. It was worship. More to the point, it was the one they worshiped that kept them safe. As we move through this season of Advent, as we move into the second week, our theme this morning is peace. And Lauren is right. I was going to move the words hope somewhere else and bring peace up. But that's a lot more of a challenge than I first thought, because those are glued to that piece of fabric, and as soon as I bump them, they're going to fall over, and it takes way more work than necessary. And so the words peace are on the back wall. This morning, it's our theme. As we come to Isaiah 11, 1 through 10 this morning, I'm going to divide the readings into a couple of different sections to help us understand what Isaiah's prophecy is all about. Amazing words that we get to read, and some that we are so familiar with. But what was Isaiah really saying? What did he see in his prophecy? And how do we understand it unfolding in our world today, even in a world that seems like peace is so far away? Let me read from verses 1 to 5 in chapter 11 of Isaiah. A shoot will come from the stump of Jesse. From his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decide what he hears with his ears. But with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decision to the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. we move back into the book of Isaiah as we did last week, and we try to understand what Isaiah's prophecy is all about. Just as we looked at his prophecy of hope last week, we read about this shoot from the stump of Jesse. It emerges, his prophecy emerges in a season of unrest. The Davidic monarchy has faced threats of its conclusion. And this image of a stump suggests that the great tree of David's dynasty has been cut down already. Yet even then Isaiah says that there is comfort and God's promise that new growth will appear from this dead stump. You can imagine this would offer profound hope to the nation of Israel as they get exiled from the Assyrian crisis. Israel has fallen and was taken captive, and Judah was under threat. But here God promised new life from what appeared to be dead. Jesus saw himself as this fulfillment, the fulfillment of this prophecy. He is the shoot from the stump of Jesse. The Spirit of God is upon him and gives him wisdom and knowledge and the fear of the Lord. The shoot of Jesse has everything he needs to bring God's word back, God's world back from rebellion to the knowledge of God and the fear of the Lord. It's Jesus that has proper counsel, correct control of power and strength to justly serve. His delight is the fear of the Lord. This is a remarkable statement, isn't it? The actions of Jesus are not based on his emotions or prejudice or fear, not fear from his neighbor or the unknown. His sole purpose is to delight God the Father, to be about his mission, and to bring wholeness to all of creation, to bring what we would call is shalom, peace. The challenge of Isaiah's prophecy is that we read it much differently than what Isaiah wrote it and sees it. This is called the prophetic perspective. And I'm going to try to explain what that means this morning a little bit. A number of years ago, I had the opportunity to serve as an interim youth pastor. It was my first full-time position in a church. And the lead pastor and I would take a day a week and we would go hiking together. It was one of those great things that I got to do. It was privileged to take a day off and just hike. And every time he would set the course, he would do the driving. I was simply the passenger, and I tried to keep up with this older gentleman. He loved to hike. And so we would set the course, we would set the summit. This day, we're going to hike that mountain. And so we did. And often, as you can imagine, when you set out from the parking lot, you cannot see your destination. You think you can see your destination. And sometimes, as you're climbing the mountain, you can get a glimpse of the summit. But you can't see beyond the summit. And so as we would hike, we would hope that that's the summit. That's our destination. And oftentimes it was, but sometimes there was a summit beyond what we thought was the summit. Just a little bit further. Just a few hundred more feet. And once you reach the summit, you got this grand perspective of more mountain ranges, of more summits, of deep valleys and ravines and rivers and mountain lakes, only to realize that the summit you were on led to far more summits off in the distance. This is like the prophetic perspective. Isaiah writes this, and he kind of lumps everything together as he can see all the summits laid out before him, the ones that he's immediately on, and the ones that are further off. Now, Isaiah doesn't give us any timelines of reaching these summits. Just says that they're there. And especially as we get into the rest of the verses this morning in chapter 11, we get to see those that are further off. But even here in verses 3 through 5, we see these ranges that are further off. They speak of Christ's second coming, of his judgment, when he comes and he sets the world straight. So we see the stump of Jesse starting to grow, which has already started because Jesus has come to the world. He has come as a babe in a manger, Emmanuel, God with us, and we celebrate that, and we have celebrated that for a long time. And so we begin to see the regrowth happening from the stump. And yet we still see that there are summits far off. We don't live in a world of peace, of shalom, of wholeness. We don't live in a world where everything is correct. Not with humanity, not with creation, not with anything. And it seems in our day that that is still a ways off. Further summits to climb. But we hope for those days. We hope for when Christ will return. And then Isaiah goes on in verses 6 through 10. He says these words, which are, again, seems like a long way off. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together. And a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, and the young will lie down together. The lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put his hand near the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all of my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. In that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples, for the nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. It is an extraordinary vision that Isaiah gives us, one of harmony, of living with enemies and lying down with them. It represents more than just wishful thinking. In an agricultural society where predators threaten livelihoods and survival, this imagery spoke of a fundamental reordering of relationships. The shalom of God, the peace of God, is about bringing wholeness to all things. Wholeness to all people, wholeness to the whole of creation. How and when will this happen, we might ask? Well, we don't really know. We know that the stump of Jesse will grow, since Jesus is the rightful king, and he will rule justly, and it will happen in God's timing. It will happen when God deems the timing right. It is one of those mountaintops that are still a ways off in the distance. It will happen when the rightful king comes again and brings heaven to earth. Then the fear and the anger and all of that bubbles up inside of us will be gone. We long for that day. We hope for that day. We pray for that day. I don't know what your vision of peace is, but I can imagine it's probably not quite as spectacular as Isaiah's prophecy. What would your focus be? Maybe it's the end of war. Maybe it's the end of world hunger or a rebalancing of power, of money, of global trade. Biblical peace, shalom, is encompassing all of those things. It's more than the absence of conflict. It describes a comprehensive well-being that includes a right relationship with God, with others, with creation, and with oneself. Shalom entails justice and provision and harmony, flourishing for all. Isaiah's vision reveals peace as part of God's restoration process for all of creation. Imagine children leading wild animals and laying down with them. Imagine people leading countries with wisdom and justice and not power and dominance. Imagine all the things that are wrong with our world made right. Nations, people, government, all come under the power and the work of God's shalom, God's wholeness. Jesus is that person that brings wholeness, that brings shalom. And the stump of Jesse is growing, flourishing, even now. Though it's hard to see in our day and age, it's hard to see where we stand in things in the world, but Jesus is growing. The stump of Jesse is rebuilding, flourishing. And he invites us in this season of Advent to join him. Join in the season of peace. And it begins really with us, doesn't it? You think of all the things that are going on in our world, it begins with us. It begins here as we celebrate communion in a few moments. It begins with our reordering. It begins with us thinking about our unresolved conflicts, our prejudices, our fears, our attachments to security and power, and allowing us to create space where God can work beyond what we're capable of doing ourselves. Allowing God to break down these barriers and to change us, and thus change the world one step at a time. The way of peace, God's shalom, is in the person of Jesus. The stump of Jesse is regrowing, and he will bring peace. And as much as it's a far way off, a summit and a line of summits, we are called to keep climbing, to keep nearing that destination of wholeness and of peace. And it begins here with us. It begins, like I said, with communion. Recognizing that Jesus was willing to go to the cross. Yes, he came as a babe in a manger, but he was willing to pay the ultimate price. To go to the cross as a criminal for us. He is our way to peace. He is our way to wholeness, and he is our way to forgiveness. And as we come today to the communion table, may we take time to reflect on our way to peace in this Advent season.